Okay, so now the Persians are overlapped. So the Persian knights, which would be worth 3 against foot, are now worth 2, facing the Macedonians, who are worth 4. But they do have a quick kill against the Macedonians. So it's 2 versus 4. Let's see what we get. Okay, shake them up and hopefully not stack the dice again next time. Right, well, the Macedonians, Macedonians end up with a total of 4 plus 2 is 6. And the knights had 2, they got 3. Yes, so that means the Macedonians have in fact doubled the knights. So that is going to, let me just check I just want to check that real quick. One does like to do these things correctly. Yeah, they were worth 3, they were overlapped, which brought them down to 2. They've only scored 1, so that means they scored 3. They were faced by pikes, which are worth 4 against horse. Yeah. So they were doubled, yes. So that means that the knights are destroyed. Okay. Things are starting to look interesting. So the Persian knights are destroyed. So now the Persians have lost 2 units in terms of victory conditions. Okay. Then we go over to here and we can see the clash between the pikes and the mercenary hoplites. So it's 6 for the pikes against 4 for the hoplites. And let's see what we got. Ooh. Right, Macedon did well out of that one. So that's they end up with a total of 12. And the hoplites have only 2, which gives them a total of 6. So the hoplites are indeed doubled, which will in fact destroy them. Things are looking bad for Darius. So Darius has lost his hoplites. They've been shredded by the phalanx. Darius has now lost 3 units that count towards victory over here, as we can see, because we don't count them. This is a very bloody round, isn't it? Right, okay. Then down at the end here, we've got, okay, there were 3 against there were 4, but they're overlapped, so there were 3. So it's 3 against 3. And artillery, if I remember, quick killed by everything. Let's see here. Artillery, yes. So it's 3 against 3. Let's see what happens. Here we go. Okay, good for the Persians this time. So that ends up with a total of 6 against 4. So the artillery are destroyed. Okay, there we go. There's your artillery for you. Off they go. Sorry, just moved them by accident. Q. Macedonians have lost 2 units over there. Right, now, the all-important one. This is in fact the last one, right? Which is to say Alexander. Once again, going through the factors. Alexander would be worth 4 for knights, 1 for a general. So he would have been worth 5, but he has overlapped here and here. So that takes him down 2, so he's worth 3. He's faced by a unit which is worth 2. So it's 2 against 3, but if Alexander loses and has to recoil, he is destroyed, which will lose him the battle right there. So let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. 2 for the Persians against 3 for the Macedonians. Here we go. And so the Persians have lost that combat. That means it's 6 against 5. So the light horse has lost that combat. Light horse will, let's see, they will recoil from the knights, Alexander's knights. So they will recoil. Now they can recoil, they can choose to recoil 1 base width or their own depth if less than 1 base width. So I'm just going to pause a second. So they can recoil 1 base width or they can recoil their own depth. In either case, as I read the rules, and I believe this has been supported by Tony Aguilar, for example, if they recoil 1 base width, a threat zone is a base width, of course, and that would mean that they would still be within the threat zone and vice versa of each other. So I'm not sure how far Do I want to bring him forward or do I want to keep him where he is? The more forward he becomes, I suppose the more sort of isolated he would be. So if I retire, if I pull them back to there, that's exactly one depth, as we can see. Okay. If I went further back, I don't really know which one is better than the other. All right, I'm going to go there. Well, they're knights, so they are impetuous. So just as he did before, he's going to pursue. So he's going to end up there. Right, so that is in fact the end now. I believe that's the end of the combat. And as we sweep across the battlefield, we can see that the 2 Persian units that were here have been destroyed. The 1 Persian unit that was here has been destroyed, the hoplites. There were 2, who was here? There was the scythe chariots and the knights, and the hoplites here. And right, and then over there, the Macedonian artillery has been destroyed. And okay, so that's what we got. So at the moment, the Macedonians have lost 2 victory units that count towards victory, and the Persians have lost 3 units that count towards victory, although actually 4 in total. So at the moment, the Macedonians are definitely doing better than the Persians, but Alexander here is, although it's his turn now to sort himself out, but Alexander here is pretty much surrounded by Persian units. So we'll see what happens. Okay, Alexander's turn, and I believe it to be highly likely that this will be the turn in which he wins the battle after having been almost surrounded and killed himself. He's rolled 4 pips, and quite simply, the Hypaspists have engaged the Seloi. The Phalanx has moved into their flank, so that means they're in a quick kill situation. Phalanx has moved forward to the cavalry, and the Phalanx here has moved forward into their flank, which may seem like a long way from where they were, but they were able to contact them within 2 base with their normal move, and then they slid sideways to conform, which is the way the rules now work. So they're in a quick kill situation. Alexander is already in a fairly safe situation. He can recoil. He was there and he moved to there, so he can move back to here. That's not a problem. And is also not too badly off in combat. Yes, he's overlapped on one side, but he's still worth 4 against their 2, even when he's overlapped. So it's not looking good for the Persians at the moment. And around the rest of the battlefield, nothing happened. Let's just have a quick scan of the rest of the battlefield, just for the sake of completeness, as they say. Okay, so now we'll go into. There's certainly no shooting because the Macedonian artillery has been destroyed by the Persian auxilia, who finally got to grips down here. Right, so therefore, let's jump right into it. It doesn't really matter what order in which I do this, as far as I can see, although, well, actually, I don't, no, they can't recoil. I was going to say I don't want them recoiling and counting as an overlap against Alexander. They can't recoil. Right. Well, let's just, let me think. Although, that's interesting, because if Alexander recoiled to here, then they would count Alexander as an overlap. So I think I'll take some of that, actually. Right. So let's have Alexander first of all. So he's 5 reduced to 4 because he's overlapped. They're 3. So it's 4 against, they're 2, sorry. It's 4 against the Persian 2. So here we go. Right, so that becomes 9 against 7. So that means that the Persians are forced to recoil. So we'll recoil them back there. There we go. Whoops. Okay. That was that combat. I'm just going to pause this a second. Okay, and then moving on to the next combat. Let's see if we can win the battle. Right, it seems to be the best one. Well, it doesn't matter which one because the one doesn't affect the other. But right, Hippaspis are worth 3, the Seloi are worth 2, but they're overlapped, so they're worth 1. And being worth 1 is a bad place to be, a very bad place to be. So it's 3 against 1, and if the Seloi lose at all, they will be destroyed. Okay, so 3 against 1, let's see what happens. And there you have it right there. That becomes 6 against a total of 3. So they were doubled anyway. But of course, that means the Seloi are destroyed. They would have been destroyed anyway. Whoops. Because of the flanking Macedonians. So we end up with that sort of thing. So here we have the Seloi being the, the Persian Seloi being the 4th unit that counts towards victory. They've actually lost 5, but that's the fourth one that counts towards victory, and that is enough to win the battle. And then finally, because we're not done yet, we have this one here. Right, so we have the phalanx, which is worth 4 against the cavalry, which are 3, but they're overlapped. So they're worth 2, so it's 4 against 3 with a quick kill. And, oh, that's pretty final. 4 against 3, so that ends up with 8 against 4, so they doubled them anyway. And so that means that the Persian cavalry are killed. So we'll just take those out of there and see if we can drag the cavalry out of here off the battlefield without rearranging everything. Okay, pop that there, just leave that there for the photographs at the end. If I can get that right, something like that. There you go, the Persian cavalry. Okay. And that's where we ended up. So the Persians actually lost 5 units for victory, 6 in total. So it's actually a loss of 5, if you recorded these things officially, 5 against the Macedonians, who've lost 2. For viewers at home, I might be somewhat confused by my poor choice of camping equipment. This, of course, is a camp, and likewise down the Persian end, that's a camp. It's rough and ready, but there it is. So it's not a battlefield unit, just to make things clear. Yes, so Alexander was able to turn the tables on the previous battle result, where the Macedonians lost, and has had a resounding victory. And interestingly enough, in true Alexandrian style, the phalanx did get stuck into the center of the battle, and Alexander did indeed lead a charge to victory and smashed through the Persian line, putting himself at serious peril, but still draws breath and is indeed the victor. So one can imagine that presumably at this point the defeated Darius will scurry away, as was his fashion, and then goodness help these Persian auxilia over here, and then as far as the Macedonian left flank cavalry goes, they're pretty well bored to death, but they are at least still with us, and I'll do a battlefield summary in a moment. Well, I'll try and give some sort of a brief summary here of, or at least what things that stood out in the battle as far as I'm concerned. At least it's proven that I was a bit worried after the first battle between the late Achaemenid Persians and the Alexandrian Macedonians that it might be difficult for the Macedonians to win, because the Persians have so many mounted troops that they could just sort of run rings around the Macedonians. And I did give the Macedonians a break in that I gave them a position to defend that had bad going on both sides deliberately to see if that would improve their position in the battle. And of course, we did the battle was rather slow to develop, because the Macedonians were playing the game of no, we're in a good position, thank you very much, and we're not coming out. We got our flanks on bad going. But the Persians imaginatively moved into the bad going, of course, with their auxilia, and were nibbling away at the Macedonian right flank. And indeed, it was that sort of action that caused Alexander to think, I've got to do something. And so the doing something was to advance the battle line. An important thing, just with straight numbers, that I've learned is that, of course, Alexander may have to use the phalanx in a manner where it's not as deep as it might be, so single ranks, in other words. Otherwise, he's going to have a very short battle line and be very much outflanked by the Persians. The key thing is that the Persians have got a lot of mounted troops, and the pike factor against mounted of a single rank is 4, so that is pretty spiffy. That's an excellent factor. In fact, I don't think there are foot troops, not that I'm used to playing with anyway, that have a higher factor against mounted troops. Let's see, blades, of course, we've got the infamous +5 against foot. Nobody has a mounted factor higher than 4, a factor against mounted that's higher than 4. So they don't come any stronger than a single rank of pikes. Now, pikes can be quick killed by scythe chariots, of course. They can be quick killed by knights, both of which the Persians have. Although in this particular game, I'm sure some of it was to do with the dice. The one time that those units made contact with the phalanx, the Persians, it was the Persians that were killed straight away. But I'm sure that was something to do with the dice. So therefore you can have a single line of Macedonians as long as most of what's coming at them is mounted. And let's see, what else have we got? The other thing, that just a simple sort of question of geometry, which I found interesting, was when Alexander burst through the Persian line, and being knights had to pursue one base width. What this did, though, because I thought that, as that was the best combat in that particular round, fought that combat first, and what that meant is, as he then charged through the gap, it meant that the phalanx unit, which was to his right, was now facing an enemy that no longer had Alexander overlapping them, because he had burst through and gone on forward. So that's an interesting consideration. The phalanx started off with Alexander happily providing an overlap on their left, but because he burst through, he was no longer providing that. So that was an interesting result there. Other than that, well, it was a very enjoyable game. It was rather slow in the middle, while both sides sort of faced off against one another. Once again, we can see that the just going to pause this for a second. Once again, we can see that the Persian hordes have, I don't know if they actually moved at all, because of course they cost 2 pips to move, and they're not exactly tip-top troops, but there they are, sitting where they've spent most of the battle. What else? And I think that's about it for now. Oh, that's right. It was also interesting, though, to do that math. I like the math that I figured out over here, where we concluded that it was actually impossible for the light horse to double the opposing Darius, or any cavalry general, or any light chariot general. It's impossible for them to double them, so they cannot destroy them. So there we go. And other than that, a good time was had by all, and I say here's to it.